Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More. Are you a prospective player or game master for the Prince Valiant storytelling game, but don't know where to find the rules for a reasonable price? Perhaps you want to take a look at some of the rules in more detail before you decide to spend the money for one of the books on eBay. Or perhaps you already have the book and you just wish you had a more handy reference sheets that you could put into your Game Master screen. Well, I've got some options, an option for you that I have discovered, which might make that whole scenario, those several scenarios, a little bit easier to handle. And those are the Prince Valiant storytelling game system cheat sheets. These are collated by Justin Alexander and can be found on the Alexandrian.net. All right, and what these are is a series of tables and pieces of information which kind of give you the core of the Prince Valiant system as far as rules kind of go, the crux of things. It doesn't talk anything about the intellectual property or, there's a lot of other stuff it doesn't cover, but it covers the basics. For example, you have brawn and presence, and it gives you a very basic description of each. Brawn is the physical feats of strength, endurance, and agility. Presence covers all cognitive, psychological, and interpersonal abilities, observation, courage, charisma, intelligence, forcefulness, as well as self-discipline. The typical human has 2 or 3 in either of these, and the human maximum is 6. So 6 is like the mightiest person in the world as far as brawn or presence goes. Skills. What it tells you, what does a skill level mean? How many, when you put points into a skill, what does that translate to? So, 1 point in a skill is rudimentary training. You know the basics. A 3 points into a skill is normal competence. So someone who is a well-trained knight at the top of their game would, on average, have a 3 with their arms and or their riding and or, whatever the other things that are required for them. Jousting. There we go. A typical tournament jouster, someone who is specializes in the joust itself more than in combat, they'd be someone who has the 3 in there, maybe even a 4. All right. A 5 indicates mastery, someone who is a master at that skill. They've trained at it for a long time. They have a lot of natural talent as well, and they're just one of the best. And a 6 represents someone who is renowned, a virtuoso level of ability, the best lancer in the land. Lancelot would probably have a lot of 6s on his sheets as far as skills go. And then we have resolution, and it talks about how we resolve things. The coins equals, or for a throw, the coins equals the brawn or presence plus skill plus modifiers. A simple action uses just your brawn or your presence only, no skills. All right? An unskilled action uses brawn or presence and may apply a penalty if the task is one in which skill is the dominant factor. So that's in addition to not having the skill, you're paying a penalty to your brawn or your presence when you're trying to do something that you're not skilled in. So be careful with that. Skilled tasks at the GM's discretion. Some tasks may only be attempted by characters with this skill. And then trained only tasks. If raw ability is not relevant, check made with only the skill. And a good example of that is the healing skill. The healing skill is typically a skill-only thing. You can't presence your way into healing somebody. So that's a good rule to keep in mind, something to have a little handy. Difficulty. This is important if you're trying to assign tasks on the fly. Very easy, only need 1 heads in order to win. Easy, 2 heads. A normal task, 3. A difficult task, 4. And a very difficult task, 5 or higher. So that's pretty simple. Complete success. This is if all coins are heads, then you actually count as 1 additional head. So let's say the toss was 5 coins and all 5 coins came up heads. Then you actually count as having 6 successes, not just 5. Simple opposed solution. Most heads wins. There is no tiebreaker. Extended opposed resolution. Character with more heads inflicts extended penalty on opponent's pool equal to the difference in results. 0 coins in the effective pool means that the character has been defeated. Recovery is at the GM's discretion, ranging from instantaneous to a single day. A partial recovery may have the penalty if action must be taken before the full recovery. So I think what that means is if you, like for example, let's say someone's in a fight and you don't want them to just bounce back right after the fight. That's not narratively good for you in your opinion. So you can have a penalty, like they have a penalty of 2 coins, 3 coins to their brawn until they are able to fully rest and recover. And so you say for the next, for the rest of the game session, that's your penalty until you're able to take X number of hours to rest. And then the character has a chance to do that, and then they can recover fully. That's a good, interesting way to do it. Or maybe like as a result of an encounter, you are covered in mud and other things that are very stinky. And now your character just has a permanent, you've got -2 coins to your presence right now because no one is going to want to pay attention to somebody who is covered in mud and other stinky things, right? So that's a way to kind of handle that resolution mechanic. There's some rules about personal combat here. Coin pools, brawn plus skill based on attack type. Well, most of it is going to be probably arms, but it could also be jousting and things like that. Hand-to-hand is usually arms, battle, or jousting. So arms would be if you are fighting a duel. Battle would probably be if you are fighting in a battle on the battlefield. And then jousting would be for the jousts itself. If you are your tournament jouster and you're trying to use that specific jousting skill instead of using your ability to just hit your opponent, because jousting has its own rules. Okay, missile. To understand how missile works in personal combat, then you see the archery pool. What the missile combat basically means, you tend to be rolling up against a difficulty, and then that difficulty is modified by the armor your opponent is wearing, and if they have cover or if they're out in the open and really easy to see, things like that. Formal combat, like a duel, is recommended to use simple opposed resolution, stopped after opponent is knocked down or lightly wounded. So if you're just if you're fighting till first blood, and this is not a duel to the death, you can just use the simple one. It's a single pass from both opponents, and then whoever wins kind of takes the day. And you can narrate it. You and the player can narrate it however you want. Make it sound fun and cool, and that will work pretty well. Now, this is not going to give you that the knockdown, drag out fight. That's the next one. That is serious conflicts. Use extended opposed resolution, which inflicts injury. Injury acts as an extended penalty, can be addressed with the healing skill. Injury at 0 brawn, recovery of 1 hour bruising or 1 week serious. If GM determines severe injury may require healing to survive. So that's a cool suggestion of how to handle that. Multiple combatants or a horde. So let's say you're fighting against a group of peasants all at once, and you don't necessarily want to use the extended combat because you don't want this to be fast and quick. So GM creates a coin pool for the horde. So I've got six peasants in a peasant revolt against my 1 knight. So that becomes a die pool of 6. Each coin lost equals 1 or more members of the horde being eliminated. Okay. Multiple combatants detailed. Single opponent must divide coin pool between all opponents, resolving each attack separately. That's when, if you're doing a detailed combat, if you try to make all your combats detailed, awesome. I mean, that's going to be pretty cool for you and your players. But it's also going to mean that if you, for example, if you got 3 players going up against 6 goblins, excuse me, not that there's goblins in Prince Valiant, but let's say there are six raiders, and each one is taking on 2 of them. There's a pretty good chance, unless your characters have very large coin pools, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to get overwhelmed, or at least one of them will, during that combat. The detailed resolution combat against multiple opponents is brutal. Very brutal. So that's one thing. Like this system is awesome because, in my opinion, it can do the fun comic book style wham, bam, 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 and then we move on. Kind of combats where people can feel really powerful, especially if you're only doing the simple resolutions and just like, oh man, you defeated that one. Let's get moving on to the next one. Oh, you defeated that one too. Let's keep on going. Or that one he knocked you back, and so you're now back in this new position, and now you've got to fight from this different position with a different coin pool. Blah 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 blah. It can do that really well. Or if you want to get into the gritty of it, you can give each opponent their combat pool, and suddenly that group of little little guys with their daggers coming at your knight, your heavily armored knight, suddenly a group of 3 opponents becomes a very scary prospect, even for a heavily armored knight, because if they can get in and surround him and get their knives, and one of them is going to be able to get his knife in somewhere where the knight doesn't want that knife. And the knight is going to have to split his attention or her attention between all 3 of the attackers to try to fend them off. And suddenly, that knight is on the defensive. It doesn't matter how powerful they are. They're going to be on the defensive with these, supposedly weak opponents. And that's how people won these battles in the past, was, surrounding these heavily armored knights and just beating the ever-loving crud out of them until they stopped moving. And so this system actually kind of does that for you, for those kind of detailed combats. One of the reasons why I like it. But anyway, we're getting distracted here. Sorry. Mass combat, coin pool, brawn plus the battle school. Mass combat round takes about 1 hour. Battlefield command roll. If no adventurers are in command, the GM determines number of rounds the mass combat will last. Then there's you can make a presence survival roll to see if you can, how well you survive based upon your character's ability to rally the troops or the troops' ability to rally themselves. And then brawn, as for just beating your enemy physically or being beat by them physically. Battlefield command itself, the leader rolls battle plus presence, extended resolution versus enemy commander. Use battle modifiers, but not personal combat modifiers. but not personal combat modifiers. So you can use your brawn plus the battle skill, but you don't get to use your own arms. And what that represents is actually leading the troops in battle. You are trying to inspire them, their courage. You're not necessarily fighting to your full ability yourself. You're trying to lead other people. And you're splitting your attention enough to lead those other people, which means that's why the battle skill is used. And I kind of like that differentiation. I think that makes sense. And it allows you to create a combat leader who isn't necessarily the best fighter, but they can still be a great leader because they have great presence. Kind of like your Joan of Arc character. She actually wasn't that powerful of a fighter herself, but she was a great leader. She had awesome presence on the battlefield, and her presence made a difference. And so that would be how you would represent a character like that in this game, as a great warrior woman with great presence, and even if she doesn't have great physical ability itself. All right. When you reach 0 coins, because they're using the extended resolution system here, the side that has 0 coins first is the side that gets routed. It doesn't mean everyone is dead. It just means you're routed. You're off the field. You probably have lost a lot of your companions, but then, like, you know, the core group is still together, and so you can have that moment back at your camper, that moment on the run when you manage to regroup and rally everyone, and like, oh, I can't believe we made it. Oh, you know, where's Jenkins? Hey, oh, there's Jenkins. Okay, you know, and or oh my gosh, Jenkins didn't make it, and have those cool role-playing moments. Survival roles. Use all battle and personal combat modifiers. Presence, a survival role, inflicts extended penalty to the presence. And then a brawn survival role inflicts injury to brawn. That could mean a damage to your reputation. A presence roll could be a damage to your character's reputation for a while. Maybe there is maybe they received an injury to their face that is they are disfigured now, or they've lost an ear, so now they're less able to detect the things that are going on around them. Things like that. Or it could be, like I said, inflict extended penalty. So maybe not lost an ear, because that's, that's permanent. But an extended penalty would be just like a wound that needs to heal, or a loss of face that you need to then gain back the appreciation of your so your followers appreciate you more. So you need to gain back that. Maybe you need to gain back your personal courage. You had your courage shaken, and it's time to rebuild your sense of believing in yourself, because we got beaten pretty badly here. But how can so maybe I'm a terrible commander. Well, no, you're not, you weren't that bad. Like these are circumstances that were beyond your control, but we're going to learn from this. And we're going to get better next time. Oh, okay. All right. So that's just the first page. There's a lot of pages to this, and there's a lot of cool information here. I'm going to kind of just glide over some of the rest of this. I'll try to, because I partly wants to do more detailed information about this in future videos, about like the basic skills and the advanced skills. I want to do a video that's just about skills and what the skills mean. So I'll save that for another video. Set that aside over here. And then there's a whole list of all the different modifiers that can be applied. Now, this list is not exhaustive. There are other modifiers in the game, but it is something you can use to give yourself an idea of how it works. And by other modifiers in the game, I mean there's other modifiers possible. These are all the ones that are written into the game, but you can create your own based upon circumstances as you see them. But let's go over what is here. So light armor is a +1 to brawn in combat, but a -1 to your agility. So if you have to make it a brawn roll for agility during combat or while wearing armor, let's say you're trying to, I don't know, swing from a rope and you're wearing light armor. Well, you got -1 to agility, which means you toss with 1 less coin because of that. Medium armor, +2 in combat and -2 in agility. heavy armor, +3 in combat, -3 in agility. If your fame is greater than your opponent's, for example, if you have 1,000 fame compared to, like, if your opponent has 10,000 fame, sorry, here we go. If you have 1,000 fame above your opponent, then you get a +1 to any presence rolls when dealing with that opponent. And this could be like, trying to make political maneuvers in court, for example, or trying to impress the local blacksmith into actually, you want to do my order first instead of this other person's order because I'm in a rush, and they can wait, even though they were here before me. These are things you can use your presence for. If you have 10,000 fame higher than the person that you're talking to, then that gives you a bonus of 2 to your presence roll when dealing with them. Okay, fortifications. Like for a normal castle. Normal fortifications, the attacker's brawn is at -4. So if you're trying to, climb a castle wall to attack somebody, you're at -4 coins to your brawn during that moment. Okay, siege ladders. No adjustment assumed to be in use. I'm not sure what that means. I'll be honest. I would just go with the fortifications thing because realistically, if you're on a siege ladder, you've got one hand on the ladder and the other hand on your weapon. If you're trying to fight over the top of the battlement while you're on the siege ladder, so a -4 makes perfect sense to me at that point. Maybe they mean something else and I'm just not understanding it. I don't know. Siege tower, minimum penalty of -1 if same height as the walls. Okay, so you're running across the siege tower. The ramp drops. You run across the ramp trying to jump on the castle walls. You got -1 to your brawn because of reasons. All right. Horses, +1 coin in combat versus opponent on foot. A superior horse gives you a +1 or +2 for riding and or combat checks. An inferior horse gives you a -1 or -2 for riding and or combat checks. This is where it can become important for your character to kind of know their horse and know what their horse is about so they can be a little bit better or a little bit worse. Be aware of merchants trying to sell you a horse and not letting you look at his mouth. All right, let's see. Locations. Like difficult terrain, a lower position applies a penalty, which is typically -2 coins to a roll. Melee attack from a flank. The attacker's brawn gets +1. Melee attack from behind. The attacker's brawn gets +3. Missile attack versus cover, -1 to -3 penalty. Crossing a barrier, -1 penalty if you need to cross a barrier while attacking. On successful roll, the barrier has been crossed in addition to normal effect. Morale. Positive factors like love or loyalty can give you a +1 or a +2 to a morale roll. Negative factors like fear or panic can give a -1 or a -2. Possessions. Bonus to presents for sumptuous clothing, jewelry, weapons, horses, etc. Only applied if people are dressed differently. So if you're walking into, say, the king's court and you're dressed sumptuously, well, so is everybody else, I would hope. So you're probably not going to get to apply your bonus there. But let's say you have all your finery on you and you turn up at the court of a small-time baron who has like only one castle, and that one is probably more like a fortified farm than an actual castle because they're really down on their luck maybe, or brand new. And then all of your finery, all of your really nice things, that's going to mean a lot more. You'll get your +1 or +2 coins to your presence rolls for that. Normal, max bonus, presence +2. High nobility, if you are a high nobility, the max bonus you can receive is +3. And if you have inferior clothing or covered in filth, then the presence modifier is -1. And that's going to apply pretty much anywhere. Like, you can be dressed in finery but covered in filth. People are going to see the filth. They're not going to see the finery, I would think, at that point. I wouldn't even give you the finery result until you actually cleaned it, because... All right, anyway, weapons. A small weapon, like a dagger, no effect. Normal weapon, like a sword, is a +1. A magical weapon, or an extremely fine one, perhaps, a weapon of renown, would be a +2 to brawn. Excalibur, King Arthur's sword gets a brawn +3 and a battle skill of +2 for producing terror. That's your super one-of-a-kind magical artifact in this game. It gives a +3 to brawn and a +2 for battle skill when it comes to producing terror. Excuse me. That's important because it gives you, as the game master, an idea of the power level of various items, and when you're making your own items, how you can kind of scale them and how much is too much. So if Excalibur is going to give a maximum of +3, you're probably not going to want to start imagining up +4 or +5 swords or weapons of other weapons. You're going to probably want to stick to +1 or +2 weapons that you're creating that are more unique. Usually magic is going to be a +2. So instead of having an increase to the die pool, start thinking about other things that this weapon does. For example, that +2 to the battle skill. What if you had someone who had their sword was just a +1 to battle skill, or their sword sheds light for a 30-foot radius? Their sword, or their sword, sings a song whenever enemies are near, or, whatever you want to do. You can make it fun and be more creative. Don't just, stick to it's better in combat. That's what swords do. Let's do something else. All right, anyway, the singing sword, that's proprietary for Prince Valiant. That's their IP, but that gives you a brawn +3, because it's actually equal to Excalibur. It's supposedly a sister sword, but it can only be used in a just cause. So that's kind of a neat little mechanic idea. If your opponent, if you have a weapon like that and you try to use it for something that the storyteller views as not a just cause, you're probably only going to get a +1 bonus, +1 to your brawn instead of the +3, because the magic will just not work. I think it's kind of neat. Anyway, weather, rain, darkness, or fog, presence is -1 to awareness. Extreme heat or humidity, brawn penalties for characters in heavy armor. I would probably apply the agility penalty to someone in heavy armor, and probably in any armor, really, if they're in extreme heat or humidity. Because I think that makes a lot of sense. That's one of the reasons why people in certain areas of our history tended to not have a lot of armor, is because putting a lot of thick leather or iron close to your body where the sun is beating down on you all day is not typically the smartest thing to do. And people knew that. They figured that. They figured it out. They were smart. Of course they figured it out. They lived there. Sorry. Okay, battle modifiers. Coin values for enemy troops. If they're irregulars, like peasants with clubs or pitchforks, they're usually going to be at 4 coins. Foot troops, like for example Saxons, Goths, or militia, 6 coins. Weak cavalry, superior foot, like the Huns or the mercenaries or Roman infantry, disciplined pikemen, Viking warriors led by a king, we're looking at 8 coins. Competent cavalry, Huns led by a warlord, British men-at-arms, 10 coins. I think it's a little biased, but I'm okay with that because it is a Prince Valiant setting, and so the Britons and King Arthur's court are going to be the best. Elite cavalry, British knights, Byzantine cavalry, 12 coins. Okay. King Arthur and the Round Table, 14 coins. See what I mean? They're a little biased, but if you're playing the Prince Valiant system, you got to kind of buy into the bias a little bit. If you don't like the bias, you can strip it out if you want to and rejig a few things, but there's other systems that are better for that too. Not saying don't play it, this one. I'm just saying it. Don't lose your sleep over it. Don't get mad about it. It just is. It's funny. All right, I'm tired. Numbers. Well, if you have more than 1.5 to 1 times your opponent, then there's no effect. If there's 1.5 to 1, then more than your opponent, then you got a -1 modifier to the smaller force. If it's 2 to 1, you've got -2 to the smaller force. And if it's 3 to 1 or worse, -3 modifier to the smaller force. That can make those really, yeah, being outnumbered stinks. That's why people try not to do it. I like the system. It's very simple, but it makes sense. It works. I'm okay with it. Troop quality, green or demoralized, -2. Veteran or fanatical or desperate, +1. Elite, +2. Starved or exhausted, plus -1. Superbly mounted or equipped, +1. Mounted versus foot, -1 to foot troops. And these things can stack. So that's one way to try to stack the stuff in your favor. Because if you got some superbly mounted elite troops, then you've just got +3 to your coin pool, which more or less negates the modifier for fighting 3 to 1. So now suddenly you're fighting on an even keel because you are elite troops that are superbly equipped. And if they're mounted and your opponents are that are outnumber you are on foot, you're actually now doing one better. So that's kind of how that can work out for some of the combat. Anyway, fortifications. Camelot is a -6 for their fortifications. That's pretty good. Other famous castles, excuse me, give you a -5. A normal castle would be a -4. A small castle or a large keep, -3. An ordinary keep, a fortified wall, like Hadrian's Wall, -2. And ordinary fences, walls, and temporary fieldworks, -1. So those are all the different modifiers. Special effects, those are something that we will cover in a future video. They're an interesting tool that you can use in order to reward players for excellent roleplay or for taking their turn as the storyteller. Fame awards, that's another one we can talk about in the future. Fame is kind of an interesting system, and I think I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but I think I want to do a deeper dive just because I find it fun. And I enjoy talking about the system, and I'm realizing that I'm probably not the only one on YouTube, but there's not many of us. And so I want to put as much information out there as possible so that people who are curious have at least somewhere to go. And if I'm getting stuff wrong, you can, those of you who know the system can tell me, and then I'll try to refigure it out better. Anyway, fame effects, what you can do with fame, we'll cover that during the fame. And then there's also advanced storytelling, and that's something we'll also cover in a future video. because advanced storytelling is kind of a cool thing that talks about switching storytellers mid-session in order to give everyone a chance to like run a scene, but each player gets rewarded for that and how those rewards work. And I think it's a really cool idea. And I've seen it only one other time in one other game, and that was in the old. There was a role-playing game that was based on the Rune video game, and where you played a Viking, and in the Rune role-playing game, each player was expected to take their turn creating like an obstacle or a trap or a room in a space in the game, and so you would switch storytellers multiple times per session. And Prince of Valiant gives you options for doing that, and of course it did it first. So I'm just saying that I've only really seen that written down and codified in a system one other time, and this one is a much better system than what I read before. So I'm excited to do a deeper dive into that in the future. But that's everything I want to talk about today. I'm sure this video has been long enough already. I hope this was a little more in-depth and detailed for those who like that sort of thing. And please give me a comment down below if you enjoyed what I'm doing. If you would like more, I'm rambling again. If you enjoyed, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and I hope you have yourself a marvelous day. Thank you so much for your time, and peace be with you. Bye-bye.